Live in a constant state of fear and misery. No younger is me anymore. In a constant state of fear and misery. No younger, no younger, no. Live in a constant state of fear and misery. No younger is me
Hello, everybody. So today is Thursday, September 20th, and we're bringing you a special edition. First off, good to welcome back Nopara for an episode, which is awesome to see. And we have a special guest today, Killerstorm or Alex Mizrahi. Sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation of your last name there, but welcome aboard, guys.
Hi. Yeah, Mizrahi, actually.
Mizrahi? Okay.
Yeah, but that was good enough, right?
All right. Hi guys. I think I'm going to lead this show. I never done that, so hope it will go well. Because I found some very interesting person who was contributing to the development of Bitcoin in a very early days, and I was reading back his very early messages on Bitcoin Talk forum and things like that, and there are some really amazing things that I've seen. Let's not get into this yet. Rather, I would like to start out with reading his best comment ever on Reddit, and I would like to hear what's your take on that. So, shit, I just realized that the supermarket I'm buying groceries from is just a middleman. It doesn't really have any milk production facilities, for example. Next time I buy milk directly from a cow. So, my follow-up question is, are you buying milk directly from cows?
No, I don't. But yeah, just like saying that sometimes middlemen, they add value, basically. They run distribution and so on, so we shouldn't just, decentralize everything that might be sound great in theory, but might not be very efficient and so on, so basically.
Yes, I think this comment points out a very crucial point that if someone says you should decentralize everything, then in fact, I'm going to steal this thing. That you can just say this example that you can right away see that, hey, decentralization is not always that great. All right. I think it was a funny thing to start with. First, I'd like to address some Twitter drama because I tweeted something that was not factually true, and I'd like to talk about that. So I tweeted that you invented CoinJoin, and I showed a timeline that when Maxwell described CoinJoin the first time was 2013 August, and every paper, everything references that. However, I've seen that your description of CoinJoin was 2013 March, and let's not talk about that yet, rather the end, and that 2013 March was a description of CoinJoin, yes, but core developer Macau, Shinobi, do you know his name? I'm talking about.
Mark Friedenbach, you talking about?
Yes, Mark Friedenbach actually pointed out that Maxwell described CoinJoin in 2013 January in an I am taint rich post. And I would like to get back to these posts towards the end of this this thing. Right now, I would just like to quickly establish the timeline that what has happened. So first of all, there were Gist, Alex, you put in Twitter that you sent a letter to Art Fords, right? Do you know the date of that letter where you described the CoinJoin shame to?
Yeah, it was like not to Art Force, but to his buddy, communicating with Art Force. But yeah, it was July 28, 2012. Yeah, so I basically got it in my mail archive. So basically, I got the exact date when it was posted.
I see. All right, and actually, the thing how I found you is that I found a Reddit comment by you, and you said here, fun fact, I invented CoinJoin about a year before Maxwell's CoinJoin post. But I posted it in a private wiki, which was accidentally destroyed. Can you talk about that private wiki?
Yeah, it's a bit of a story. So I got interested in core protocol of Bitcoin since basically actually since I found it basically about Bitcoin 2010. I was interested like how this thing can scale and so on. How do we implement trusted services on top of that? So yeah, and so I saw that like development in the main line, it was called Bitcoin QT at that time. It was kind of slow, and getting into it is very hard. So I was exploring kind of various ideas like altcoins, things like that. So I thought that might be a good opportunity to experiment with new features, run a new coin, new wallet, and you can basically get creative freedom to implement whatever you want. If it fails, then yeah, so Bitcoin at least fails. So yeah, I thought about starting my own altcoin, but yeah, of course, like I basically resonate not take the risk and the responsibility. But there was a guy who was already basically it was one of the first altcoins called Bricks. It was basically like Litecoin. Litecoin started out of it. So basically, initially there was Bricks, which was developed by Art Fords, who is like a very major hacker who found some issues. Basically, he found some serious problems with Bitcoin, helped to fix them. Then he was the first GPU miner, made a lot of coins, as I understand. And basically, he thought like, we have these GPUs already occupied, so maybe we can mine something on CPU. So he invented a script, which is now used in Litecoin. Initially, it was added to Bricks coin, so basically it's his coin. And yeah, and he basically some other guy called the Lolcast, kind of like Locust. He was kind of this Art Force. He didn't have much time to develop the coin further, so basically went away to do other things. And this other guy, he was trying to restart development of Bricks. Yeah, I thought like, yeah, I need a team. Basically, I don't want to hack alone. I want to some other people to join. Basically, and the Lolcast was trying to organize it. So yeah, just how I got to actual like CoinJoin stuff is that Lolcast said we use some centralized kind of it's protocol assisted but centralized method in Bricks. We plan to do it that way. It was not actually working, but basically because Art Force he said it's impossible to make kind of privacy enhancement in trustless way using this fully decentralized basically mechanism. And I said, like, you say it's impossible. I took it as a challenge. So yeah, my mind started working like it's impossible. Okay, what do we try? What are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to do? So basically, I spent several days thinking about it, how to make a fully trustless and decentralized service. And yeah, I came up with some ideas, which yeah, basically same as CoinJoin.
You know, yes. You know, the Chaumian Bitcoin join thing and a sneaker thing, what you described in the gist, a sneaker-like coin join thing, what you described in the gist, I would like to get back to them a little bit in more detail towards the end. But I'm happy that you early days, because I'd like to ask a couple of questions about the early days. Then, for the listeners who doesn't know, and actually I'm not that long into Bitcoin, so I can only say what I've read from other people. Who is Art Fords? To my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong on that, but in Bitcoin there were 4 entities who get close to or get over 50% of hash rate. And first was Satoshi, second Artfords, third Ghash.io, and the fourth is Bitmain. And my question is, because Artfords is something described by Timos is a go-to guy who you have some technical questions, and that's why I'm really excited to have you here, because as I've seen from your Bitcoin talk posts, that you were just like a go-to guy. If someone from 2011, since you registered, you were a go-to guy. If someone had a question, then you probably had some technical answer for that. So it was really interesting. So can you tell about a bit about Artfords, that where did he go, or what happened with him?
Yeah, actually, I don't know. Like, I was talking with a guy who was talking with Artforce. I never actually spoke with Artforce directly, and that guy, yeah, we talked a bit about Artforce, and basically, no idea. Like after that time, around that 2012, he was a bit active, but like like spending just few hours. I think he was like had the great technical talent, like actually hacking things, finding holes in protocols. Kind of maybe even black hat stuff. So I guess he just I don't know, like moved to like the lolcast said, he's hacking interballistic missiles, interconnected missiles, in the sense that if after after you master Bitcoin protocol, you can go into very very kind of high profile stuff. But we have no idea. I assume his kind of operational security was very good, and we never really knew who is this guy. Maybe he's among us, basically, but we just don't know. I don't even know how the lolcast guy looks like, because he's also like, he was more like minor hacker. He was not really into like very technical stuff, just like high level things. But still, I have no idea who he is. So basically, yeah, it's like in the early days of Bitcoin communities, a lot of people, they really prefer to stay anonymous. Basically, that's that kind of cypherpunk community.
Maybe he's among us and a prominent developer. He just exposed too much black hat stuff in his old account, on Artford's account, so he doesn't want to tell the connection there. Or maybe he's Cobra.
Yeah, who knows? But yeah, like I think he mined a lot of coins. Basically, as you mentioned, he had a lot of hash. Basically, he was the first to write GPU miner. So he probably doesn't want to, like attract bad attention to it, because if you have a lot of coins, you would rather, keep your stash private.
Makes sense. Yeah. How about Satoshi? Did you talk to him? You were around, right?
No, actually, I when I joined, basically joined this forum, Satoshi was already he was only communicating with Mike Hearn. So I got basically, I still communicated with Mike. So basically, Mike was saying like, yeah, I received mail from Satoshi saying this, but yeah, I didn't talk with Satoshi himself.
I see. And what do you make of Mike Hearn?
Yeah, it's like a bit, I guess it's a bit complex character. So initially he was like actually like as you mentioned, go-to guy who thought like, of course, like Gavin Anderson was a formal leader, but Mike was really close to Satoshi, always talking with him, and he thought like we thought like maybe he has a better grasp of the theory behind Bitcoin because he basically interpreted Satoshi's words, so to speak. Yeah, and he was kind of had a lot of influence on development directions and decisions. So he, but the issue is that he basically previously worked in Google, for example, and he basically was making an approach. Basically, Google has a lot of hardware, so he said a lot of like, how do we scale? He said, we can just use hardware. Like there is no problem. We can use gigabit links and so on. He did the calculation. It's doable. He didn't really think into much more into decentralization. So while he was really influential back then he made some kind of and he actually discouraged me from researching scaling because I made several proposals on how we can scale, how we can shard the state to make sure the data is smaller. I said we don't need any of that. Let's keep the protocol simple. We can just make blocks bigger. And yeah, I was like, I would rather have a technical solution, not just not just assume that hardware will scale. But yeah, then there was an issue about like game theory. So the issue was that we assume that each miner he really works for himself, that they are not kind of benevolent, they are rational. They just want to maximize their own profit. And the problem is that Mike thought that miners, basically Bitcoin can work only if miners are cooperating with each other, only if they're benevolent. So yeah, I disagree with him on that matter because I think like at least the game theory behind Bitcoin can be complex, not fully developed, but at least that's our like narrative. And if you remove that, if you say like, oh yeah, there is some miners, they make agreement with each other, then what's Bitcoin even about? So yeah, I think a lot of people, myself included, disagreed with Mike. So basically, then we essentially his influence got reduced. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very apparent for me that that you registered to the forum in 2011, and you were in the very early days when so occupied by how to scale Bitcoin. And in 2011 it was crazy. And then I see your Reddit post about hub chains. Can you talk about that? Do you still remember?
Why I thought about scaling, because I was before that I was like more like on hobby level. I was researching peer-to-peer systems and basically like from software engineering point of view. And I found like there was like a plan to make alternative internet called something like Netsukuku. So they was like we can make an overlay like we don't like providers, let's make alternative internet. But they didn't really found a way to scale it. So I pointed out issues, talking with the team, and they say, yeah, okay, maybe we will scale in future. So I say basically then like I was like reading about Netsukuku, and I was reading about Bitcoin. I thought maybe it's going to like global currency going to have a scaling issue as well. And I read the paper, and so yeah, it kind of makes sense. But the scaling, like I was installed it on my computer, and it was actually like the initial node. It was very slow because like not optimized, like input output levels, and they were basically making all this HDD noise. Even the blocks were empty, but it still was syncing very slow. So I thought like, yeah, it needs a lot of like improvement, basically thin clients and so on. So I was very skeptical in Bitcoin's ability because people were not talking about second layer back then. I was very skeptical, and yeah, I thought maybe Bitcoin is a start. It's a good basically way to build trust, but maybe we can scale. So basically, pretty much right away, I started to research how can we scale this to actually make it a global currency.
I wonder at what point get you desensitized by the price, because everyone who gets into Bitcoin and starts to develop in it over time, in a couple of years, they start to don't care about the price. When did it happen with you?
I didn't care much initially because the price, I don't even know what price was. So it was no way for me to buy it anyway. So basically, but yeah, then maybe I cared about it a little bit. It was fluctuating, but yeah, since I saw that basically, like it was below $1, then it was $30, then it crashed to like $2. I thought like, okay, so it fluctuates a lot. Of course, like bigger prices is better, but yeah, I was basically my main motivation was technology, basically, not getting rich price, things like that. I didn't buy it for like. Initially, there was no good opportunity, and as I really want to speculate, I was just like looking how to participate in this and try to basically build this decentralized system.
I see. And people talking in a chat about revoking commit access to Bitcoin Core Git repo. I think Janine is referring there to Amir Taki. I think. Do you know what happened there when Gavin revoked Amir's commit access?
No, not really. Basically, yeah, there was a lot of basically drama around these days when this commit access was revoked. But yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not really up to date. I think like it was like in, of course, like in 2015, if I'm not mistaken, when was the scaling drama. There was basically, it was obvious that Hearn will try to basically, that he is at odds with the rest of the community, as well as Kevin, of course. So yeah, it made sense that basically just to minimize this drama, it would make sense to revoke the. I don't think it's like the commit access is very important, because like if you are the leader, people will follow your repository wherever it is. So basically, they're just like formalizing the different lines in development communities, that it was basically Gavin Hearn. I think that basically entire camp was at odds with the other developers, and yeah, it made sense for them to part their ways and continue developing, because you cannot really develop if you have constant disagreement and people actively trying to kind of like popular vote, like use my Bitcoin, not their Bitcoin. Their Bitcoin is bad. That's kind of not really productive. At least you need basically a clean split, I think.
I see. And now, but you, what happened to you? You were a programmer, right? But not a C++ programmer.
No, actually, I was basically programming a lot of different languages, including I spent several years, maybe something like 3-5 years, programming C++. So yeah, I could program, basically could contribute to core in theory. But yeah, I was always motivated by new features. So I'm not motivated by like incremental, like making something faster, for example. That's like not much motivation for me to fix some small issue, make something faster. I was looking for new features to implement. So that was very hard to, like the Bitcoin Core wallet itself, it's kind of very dated, and even core developers themselves, they do not recommend it. Essentially, like as they say, yeah, it's lacking features. It's not HD wallet. It's basically you can lose your money on it. It generates each key randomly. Of course, it's well tested, but otherwise, it's kind of so yeah, I was looking basically into more like application level development, to add new features, to give people new ways to interact with Bitcoin. So I just didn't see much motivation working on core, basically, the core node software.
Yeah, and I see that you were working on colored coins a lot, weren't you? Can you tell what was the story there, and what's the state of colored coin now, or you stopped working on it a long time ago?
Yeah. It was basically, I was looking, as I mentioned, on like application level. What other, like I saw like Bitcoin is great. Okay, and people, and we already have a bunch of people working to improve it, developing wallets, incremental progress, and so on. Nice. I was basically looking what else we can do in it, and I thought like maybe I was initially looking to develop my own project, which is kind of Ripple. Before you have Ripple Inc., there was Ripple that more like a concept project. I thought like we can make, and it was centralized, so maybe we can make semi-decentralized Ripple where people can not exchange not Bitcoin but virtual dollars they owe themselves. So it's basically like just a ledger, and it can be secured using, since it's a ledger, it's not very important to have this kind of security like Bitcoin. Can be secured using anchoring. So for example, there can be a centralized server which produces kind of ledger, but it's time-stamped in Bitcoin. So if you want to be sure, you just wait several days and you can basically. So yeah, I was looking to make this project on my own. Then I saw like I was scanning Bitcoin Talk. It was really a hub for communicating about Bitcoin back then. And yeah, I thought like new idea. Like there was like a guy around. I don't recall right now his surname. Ron something. Ron Gross. Yeah, Ron Gross. He posted. He has two ideas. That one is colored coins. Second is master coins. Does it have any merit? So I read both. I am open to new ideas. It was an altcoin forum, I think. And then I thought, colored coin. It makes a lot of sense that we can use existing Bitcoin blockchain, which is already kind of established, secured, and so on, and just add a little bit client-side, basically, protocol to issue new assets on it, and any kind of basically asset, new coin, for example, if you want. So I thought like, it's actually should be easy to implement because you can use same transaction, just make alternative client, essentially, just make alternative wallet. And master coin, I didn't really like the idea. It was like kind of the same thing, but it works technically. So I said like master coin is not professionally written, bad idea, not efficient, but colored coin, let's do it. And then there was a group of people working on it, but basically just here they were discussing it would be cool to have something like that. And I was C++ programmer, so I said, okay, I want to actually make something new. Okay, so I started coding. I patched, made the patch for Bitcoin Core, was the daemon Bitcoin D. To add this coloring thingy, so you can basically, it was initially basically you need to run a separate instance for each color you want. So basically it was, kind of on wallet level, it restricted it to certain color. It was not very kind of efficient, but it showed proof of concept that you can track actually specifically colored coins using this Bitcoin D instance. And you could, for example, make an altcoin using that, just a patch on Bitcoin D and so on. So I made it like in about a week. I made this coin tracking thingy, and so I showed to the rest of the group. It does it. I look at this. I tried something, and they say, "Oh, cool! Now we actually have some code." So that's how I led this project. So I said, okay, I see like there is interest in community. So now I will actually lead the project, but I thought like I will just start it and some other people will pick it up. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life on colored coins. It was a lot of crazy experience because I have spent maybe half of my time, or maybe 3/3 of my time talking with people, trying to convince them colored coins are cool, trying to standardize it, with different ideas. How do we implement this protocol? A lot of people it's a lot like herding cats, because people just throw out the idea and run away. They're not really interested in standardization. They just want to show the idea. So it was kind of challenging in that way. I was leading it for maybe a year. I made very early on. I made like 95% of code myself, essentially. It was like a wallet built on top of Bitcoin Armory, early wallet and Python, combination Python, C++. So you can issue your coin. You can sell. Basically, there was an actually built-in exchange, trustless exchange. You can list it for selling, sort of like order books, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was. It was working in January 2013. I launched alpha version. There were some contributors, most notably Vitalik Buterin. He was interested in this project, wrote a few lines of code on this, particularly on the exchange part. I was looking like it was really crazy in terms of kind of standardization, and later people just trying to make different protocols and the same idea, different protocol, just for the sake, like having their own startup around that. Like a year later, in 2014. Including like Vitalik was also making his own specification, deliberately not compatible with what I was doing. I made the whole wallet, called Chroma wallet, with basically in Python. Basically, I understood that piggybacking on existing wallet, it's very hard because you have to deal with all the bugs and the architecture, which is not really suitable for what we are doing. So eventually I made my own. It was Bitcoin wallet with colored coin support. At that point, it kind of branched away. And finally, in 2014, I saw what people are going to use it for. And it was basically, I would say, scamming people, because there was like some mining projects in Bitcoin, people trying to raise money for mining farm, and there was not always a mining farm. They might just raise money for themselves and retire. And like, who are going to use this token technology? Scammers. So should I make a wallet for scammers? Maybe no. So I left some kind of alpha version or beta, I don't remember. I said like, okay, it's still in development, don't use it. Use these other guys. Okay, if they want have a startup, I'm okay with that. Use these other guys if you want. And I went to founded a company which tried to commercialize blockchain technology, and particularly colored coins. We had a project with a bank. In 2015, the bank issued colored coins on Bitcoin blockchain, which represented euro. That was, I think, the first stable coin on public blockchain, probably bank issued stable coin. But yeah, it was kind of small pilot project. I think now the protocol is roughly dead. Because after the price hike, people understood that it's not really suitable for colored coins, not suitable for kind of enterprise users, because like nobody's going to spend, like if there is another kind of congestion, nobody's going to spend $5, $10 to send one transaction. And for making tokens, there are now a lot of other projects for making tokens, so colored coin doesn't look very exciting, but there are people who are trying like make spiritual and ancestors, basically descendant of colored coins. Giacomo Zucco and I think Peter Todd are working project called RGB. So that's kind of uses slightly different protocol approach, but it's kind of similar in terms of features. But yeah, it's going to be more flexible and moving between different chains, so more interesting. So that's basically the kind of fate of colored coins, I would say. I don't think, maybe some altcoin can adopt something similar to like Litecoin, considered that on the protocol level, but there is not much point in resurrecting it for Bitcoin, for example, in its original basically capacity.
All right, before we go to the privacy stuff, can you tell us what are you working on now? Are you working on something now?
Oh yeah, we are working on a lot of things. I'm basically, company is called ChromaWay. We do like blockchain framework, basically which can be used to build all kinds of blockchains. And we are doing public blockchain, starting doing public blockchain as well now. So basically the idea is like there's a lot of people who want to do the blockchain stuff, but like in ways which are different from Bitcoin. It's called what we are doing is called Chromopolis. So basically, the idea is that we can reuse proof of work made by Bitcoin to secure this additional data, like tokens or whatever people want to do with it, using Bitcoin's proof of work. So we just anchor the data in the Bitcoin blockchain that allows basically it's can be considered a side chain. It's essentially like similar to what I described initially as a hub coin, where different, basically, you have a kind of constellation of different blockchains. They anchor the data to basically in one blockchain to make the whole basically system stronger, and you can move like different coins between different chains and so on. So that's my main project right now.
All right. And let me ask you something. You said you basically stopped working on colored coin because who's gonna use it? Only scammers, right?
Yeah.
So doesn't that apply to what you're doing right now with the blockchains?
Yeah, basically there is a fine line, I think, between scam, because basically the scam, I'm not going to say each token project is a scam, because there are some genuine innovation in there. Of course, it's kind of dubious, like nobody knows it's going to have any value in future. It's kind of speculative, but there is new technology being developed and people actually want it. Basically people want to decentralize more than just the currency, to have decentralized sort of communities and so on. New technology is coming out of it. So I think like if people want to issue tokens, there's already like Ethereum and other platforms on that. We are like, what we want to do is more for making actual decentralized applications, where you actually have, let's say, like Twitter, for example, all records there are public, but it's owned by a private company. But can't we make a decentralized Twitter? Of course, we can in principle. It shouldn't be very hard, basically. So that's what we're doing. We're basically making a platform where you can make, for example, decentralized Twitter if you like concerned about censorship. And yeah, it could be a kind of efficient, like, because you cannot make Twitter on Bitcoin, it will be very expensive and inefficient. So we are like making a technology to make actual decentralized apps possible.
All right, let's move back to privacy. So in 2000, when did Maxwell came into Bitcoin, Gregory Maxwell?
Actually, I don't remember. Maybe 2012, but yeah, it's hard to say really. Maybe 11 even.
And were there people who were working on Bitcoin privacy before that, except you?
No, I don't think so. It's very hard, with these things. It's hard to trace the origin, because for a long time the idea fluctuating in the community. People just mention show me something. They don't really describe a complete protocol. They say, yeah, maybe we can combine. So yeah, basically Art Force, I would guess he tried to kind of analyze it, and he thought that it would require a kind of advanced cryptography, and he thought like maybe centralized solution would be better. So I haven't heard much. Yeah, but basically colored coins, it was idea, trace back. So I found several references, like different people came up with this idea independently. So I guess as the same way with privacy, maybe people had this idea like how to implement privacy, but back then people were concerned more like how do you make a wallet which actually working and convenient. So people not really were ready to actually develop these privacy features yet.
That's a good point. Okay, and so yeah, so ideas were going around and stuff back then, and then after actually Maxwell's post August 2013 about CoinJoin, after that people started to implement stuff, and I think there was a generation of people who were working on privacy, and I would like to ask what do you think? One was One was the shared coin, blockchain info shared coin, if you remember that. It was a coin join implementation which used unequal amounts and not great way. The other one was Dark Wallet by Amir Taki and Cody Wilson. And then Christoph Atlas and the open privacy projects guys were working on privacy stuffs too. So what do you make of this generation? Were you following the work at this?
Well, kind of, yeah. By the way, one way basically people addressed privacy before that is centralized mixer. So basically the idea is send not trustless. So basically you send money to some guy, he sometimes later, he wants to avoid correlation, he sends you money from a different address. So people have been doing this, I think, around like, how it's called?
No? Bitcoin Fog was the first.
Yeah, that too, I guess. No, I mean, like there was Silk Road, yeah. So when people started doing Silk Road, they already like knew about this trick that there were some darknet services which kind of had good reputation, and you can send coins, get back. So they understood they can get privacy. So basically, then the second generation, what I was basically making, I was like, there is a centralized service, okay, but how do we make it trustless? So yeah, I think with blockchain info, it was I think initially they were running not a coin join but simpler mixer. Then they started to do coin join, but you still have to trust, as far as I understand, you still have to trust the company.
Simpler mixer.
Huh?
They were running a mixer, not coin join.
Yeah, they were running a mixer that was hidden sand. I don't remember the actual name for it, but they were running simple centralized mixer back then. It was like just, like they didn't really get much into regulatory stuff. So like they just thought like it's a part of the wallet functionality. You send one address, we send another, so something like that. So yeah, and then people started like, if we add it to the wallet, more people are going to use it, and will be automatic. And we have basically, because we want to increase the mixing style, because if only people who are buying drugs on Silk Road are going to mix with each other, then it's not good, because it's still, you still can trace money to Silk Road. But if everybody uses it, it just increases fungibility of all Bitcoins. That it's actually, so that was idea basically of this like new generation, like dark wallet. But yeah, it's like some criticism about it, that people, when it was posted, people, why do you call it dark wallet? It's basically, it's still the same issue that only like criminals are going to use. Call it a flower or something beautiful. Everybody should use
wasabi.
Yeah, so, and there was but yeah, I think like there were like technical difficulties. Like in general, making a Bitcoin wallet is hard, especially if you want to make a good kind of good wallet which doesn't lose coins, which syncs fast. I made like 3 or 4 wallets, including those who I basically started other code base. It was always a pain. Like if you want like use kind of use to make it fast without really installing full node on the user system, then you need to use a remote service. So the problem is that those remote services, they sucked big way. They were like constantly disappearing and not stable, changing API, not providing you with what you want. So that was a major issue. Then again, as the logic of the wallet itself, it's also very challenging. We had problems with synchronization, like, well, you received payment, but wallet like kind of lost it somewhere in its guts. So yeah, I guess that's kind of plugged it, because in theory it could be possible even back in 2013 to make an awesome trustless mixer. Maybe like not perfect, but at least working a mixer. But with all this kind of wallet logic, it was hard to actually implement, and people were struggling. Like Amir Taki, he had to develop the whole infrastructure. So he developed Obelisk nodes to supply data to a sync wallet, because you need to make SPV and so on. And that was also basically, they had a small team, but they needed to develop all the infrastructure. So basically, I guess that's how it was kind of delayed, and not many people used it.
You know, I'm not sure if you know, but I actually built a trustless mixer, and it's already in production, and in 1 month it's going into 1.0, so stable. It's called, and you said that, why do you call it dark wallet, right? So I called it hidden wallet back then for years while I was developing it, and then I thought, all right, it's ready for prime time, but I realized maybe it's not the right name to go with hidden wallet, so we renamed it Wasabi. All right, so that's my story. That might be more pleasing to regulators, you know. Where I wanted to go with this is that there was another generation of Bitcoin privacy work which resulted Join Market by Chris Betcher and Adam Gibson, and the paper of Coin Shuffle. Are you familiar with those?
Coin Shuffle, I probably not. No, I just I knew that there are several kind of research projects improving the mixing and so on, but I didn't really. I think I only read in depth Tumblebit for some reason. It's a bit different kind of approach. But yeah, Coin Shuffle probably no. Yeah, I basically I looked through the Join Market. Seems kind of just I understood it's just a pragmatic implementation, probably centralized, more centralized, if I understand correctly, but kind of working.
So basically, I worked 1 year on Tumblebit, all right? So I kind of know that thing. Basically, the centralization is different, because what Join Market needs and what Coin Shuffle needs is a bulletin board, right? So that's still a server or an IRC server. So you just have to send messages. Well, in Coin Shuffle, someone has to broadcast it. Anyway, the point is that you still need a server, but the server is doing much less than in the Tumblebit server. That's the difference in centralization. But in the end, my personal philosophy is, who cares if the server cannot steal and cannot de-anonymize? Then let's not go and buy a milk from a cow. Yeah. So all right, let's get back to 2013 January. Gregory Maxwell, I am taint rich. He made this post where, well, it was after your email and after your wiki conversation, which of course we don't have a proof. I believe you, and that everyone can make their own mind. That's if you are credible or not credible. I tend to think you are. So I give it to you that you came up. You are the one who I know who came up with the concept of joining coins together. But then in 2013, January, Gregory Maxwell described in a Bitcoin Talk post, I am taint rich. And what he did there is he posted a Bitcoin address and said, he asked people to build a transaction with one of the coins on their address and sign the transaction and send the transaction to him to sign on that and broadcast it. So basically, multiple people are joining their coins together. You have any comment on that, Shame? I just wanted the people to catch up that what was happening there.
Yeah, I didn't. Basically, I think Greg his reaction was to taint analysis. So basically, it's not so much to enhance. I guess first of all, we don't really know who invented basically joining inputs together from different people, because it's pretty obvious, I guess, and maybe a lot of people thought about it. Yeah, so basically, Gregory, he was basically just addressing very kind of naive way of the taint analysis. So it's not really basically, maybe like you can see that it's one step in direction of coin join, but not what I described in coin join, because like even before that, in September 2012, we already just basically, even aside from basically my work on privacy stuff, we were doing that kind of stuff in for trading colored coins. The idea was to trade colored coin. You kind of trade colored coin for Bitcoin, you'd make an atomic transaction. So I didn't make a connection myself, but I came basically on ERC and told people colored coin idea. What do you think about it? And Peter Woolley, he said, oh, well, like it's great. You can actually join basically transaction colored and uncolored coin, and basically atomically exchange them. So yeah, so it's decentralized exchange as well. So I understood that it's actually better than just sending coins between people. Then Jeff Garzik, he basically, like Gregory Maxwell also was talking about it. Didn't check it, but Jeff Garzik, he said, like, explain it to me, like, okay, it sounds very cool, explain how it works. He didn't catch it out on this post. Like in September, they already figured it out. It's called atomic coin swapping. Like you can swap coins between two people. Yeah, and actually, people even suggested even in the autumn, maybe we can use it for privacy. Like you can tag this color, basically, a tainted the coin can be a colored coin, for example. You can color it in your mind, and you do this mixing with some other guy. So I think it was, just like very kind of incremental process where people talking about just combining inputs. Maxwell talked about taint analysis, and later he basically, this coin join post, he put a sort of brand on it, because it's hard to talk about something which doesn't have a name. So he explains the idea very well, and he said it's called coin join now. And people like after that, of course, it became much easier to start like implementing it, and it basically caught on this name.
Right. So the proposal that you sent in an email to a guy who worked for Artfords, right? Yeah. So that was, yeah. So let's not describe that. I just have some notes for that. It is similar, but not the same. Just a little bit similar than what Adam Gibson described as sneakers. I actually tweeted it in the afternoon. I'm not sure you've seen that, but anything, that's a very similar proposal when people just basically create transactions of, and those transactions might be joined together with other people. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly what happened, but kind of like a passive approach to mixing. And the other thing what I noted is that you were doing pre-division of UTXOs, which is, I think, something I would like to talk about, but in the next shim, what you described. And this was many-to-many mixing techniques, so more people can build on top of already built transactions. What's kind of nice. Actually, no. How could they do that? They have to be online then. Maybe I misunderstood something.
Yeah, it was an online scheme. So yeah, basically, what I was trying to do is to prove at that point is to prove that it's possible. Basically, in general, like prove it's possible, it's doable. Now and later optimize it. So I think maybe I described something more optimal version later, more like variants, but it was lost in that wiki. I have no recollection of what exactly it was. But yeah, it's like initially, basically, when I was trying to prove it's possible, I saw like, let's suppose we completely forget about efficiency. We can do just of course, like we need in a setup, we assume like good setups that UTXOs are divided in basically one BTC or whatever, one each. So it's like kind of good setup. Because wallet can easily do it. And then basically you can do basically a lot of people, like as you mentioned, like if you have a server where we just can exchange information, or maybe some peer-to-peer network, so basically just for sending some pieces of data without considering what they are. So people can just make a deal with each other. They can make a kind of get this coin together, and nobody knows the output. So like my takeaway from it, like I assume that of course there are like good guys mixing and bad guys. So basically, because kind of there's a possibility that let's say CIA will infiltrate or NSA will infiltrate the system and will try to get into this protocol, mix their coins. They can trade their own coins around the system, and they can withdraw it without basically NC good guys. So the system should be resilient to that. And and of course, another concern is that person can de-anonymize himself. For example, later he does something stupid and his input and output coin is linked, and then you can withdraw that coin from the mixing set. So my idea is that we have good guys have a mixing set and output mixing set, and basically should be kind of the same. And if they mix with each other, let's say randomly, no matter how many CIA guys are in this crowd, eventually they will have like information theoretically. It won't be possible to trace a certain coin to a certain individual. So that's how I proved that with sufficient number of rounds, it's going to basically mix these coins in a very good fashion. Like maybe, of course, you won't get a perfect mix ever, but you get very, very close to that. So that's basically my first idea.
Right. So that's one of the reasons why, and it applies to this too. That if you notice, this shame is actually quite a blockchain space. Eating the blockchain space, right? Because you have to do a lot of mixes, and that's why I had to stop working on Tumbleweed, because I realized that there is something else that doesn't need the blockchain space that much as Tumbleweed does, and these days, back then when we started working on Tumbleweed, we didn't care about it. It was fees were like nowhere, but today, well, not today, but like a year ago, fees were going up like crazy, and we didn't know what's going to happen. So we had to figure out privacy techniques. Those are actually cheap too. Anyway, another very interesting thing I noticed in your thing is the terminology that that you called the bad guys, the adversaries, the malicious actors, rats, and you called the mixing process as laundering. Was this formatting back then that you are calling these terminologies?
Yeah, the laundry, I took it from the Locust guy or Art4. They had very own specific terminology. With rats, I probably invented it myself at that point, because like I think not so much like a CIA infiltration, but maybe some people just selling their data, for example, later on. So kind of like so basically it has very kind of specific, I know, like later I called it mixing, because we basically mix coins. Makes more sense, I'd say, but they talking about laundry, so I would go with that terminology. Why not?
All right, let's move on to the last topic today, which I'm the most interested in, because what you described back then in 2013 March on Bitcoin Talk, the title of the post, coin mixing using Chum's blind signatures. So this is what you described back then, and I wrote a paper called Zero Link, and that's what I described too. Of course, I put a lot more words in there, but you even identified the attack vectors exactly the same what I identified. It was so interesting to see that the idea existed almost to the word, that what I described and what I built and what people are using right now in Wasabi. And for 1.5 months it's out already, and already over $200,000 went through it as mixed transactions. So congratulations, your idea from 2013.
Yeah, yes, it shows how much it basically goes from idea to actual, working, like production implementation. Like it's easy, relatively easy to come up with ideas, but like actually implement, basically devil is in details. It takes so much time to actually perfect it. There's all those issues and so on. Target DOS vectors, I would assume that can be an issue for this kind of scheme.
Yeah, I always describe to people when they ask me that where did I get this idea, that I read Gregory Maxwell's post in 2013 like a lot, and at one time I read it more carefully than other times, and I saw that in the frequently asked questions in two or three lines he described this idea, and it seemed to everyone forget it, and I asked the creator of Tumbleweed, Ethan Hammond, that because what I knew about CoinJoin, that was what I read from the Tumbleweed white paper, and I asked Ethan that, hey, you said this about CoinJoin, but you see what Maxwell said here? And he's like, oh, I read that like 100 times and I always miss that. So it seems to be like something forgotten. And it's not only forgotten what Maxwell said, where everyone is referencing, but your stuff was also forgotten, what you said like five months ago, and you actually explained it much in more detail than Maxwell did. So that I found really interesting. The only thing that differs actually from my implementation and my description is that you pre-divided the UTXOs and I did not. And I think Samurai is actually doing something like they will be pre-dividing the UTXOs, but their paper is not public yet or written. I don't know, Whirlpool. So they are doing something like that. So that's more closer than what you described. So first, what do you think about the pre-division of the UTXOs? Why do you think that's necessary?
Well, it's just, for me, maybe it's mental model is easier. But I mean, like if you find a way that you don't need to divide it, then basically, yeah, you can do it in the same transaction. It might be more efficient. I was just, at that point, I was like describing kind of what would be most easiest to implement, and it's easier to think about. Oh yeah, I can pre-divide UTXOs. Should be quite easy to implement in a wallet. So yeah, I assume that step is already taken, and we go on for kind of this other stuff. So yeah, maybe if it doesn't matter, then you can of course use different model.
All right, so let's go into what you said there. One thing that I noticed that you're using the exact same coordinator setup as I'm using in Wasabi Wallet, and what you said there is user submits a pair, an out point, and he wants to mix, and the blinded hash of receiving address. That's exactly what I'm doing in Wasabi. And then you say he also needs to pay a small fee. The server responds with blind signature of an address. I'm sorry if I'm using this terminology incorrectly. I've just read blind signature or Go description. Actually, you are, so that's what you said. You are not using the term, you are using the terminology very close to be correct. So what you said, the server responds with a blind signature of an address. The server actually responds with a blind, with the signature of the blinded address hash. Yeah, so that's the only difference. And since the server is signing the blinded hash, that's why it becomes a blinded signature and it can be unblind. So yeah, that's a smart thing. All right, what do we have here? Then you said sometime later the user submits his address together with an unblinded signature. Yeah, exactly what I'm doing. But you have to know that if the user submits an address together with an unblinded signature, then you have to do it with a anonymity network identity, with a different anonymity network identity. Which actually brings us back to what you said about Amir Taki, that he had to wrote so many things in libBitcoin to dark wallet to work, and I did too, because I had to write so many things in .NET to Tor to work as I wanted to work. So I ended up maintaining the only .NET Core, that's the cross-platform .NET, the only .NET Core library for Tor. Yeah, so there are some basic things that people has to do before they can get into working on something. That's really interesting.
Yeah. When you think about idea, you assume that of course the Tor is already working. You assume that you have a good wallet and so on. Then you think like, how do we combine? When I got to this Chaumian hash, I was first initially had different ideas like in my mind with servers and without servers and so on. And then one day I thought like, people were talking about Chaumian hash. I thought, what is it? I tried to read the Chaum's paper, and their paper about blind signatures is that, yeah, we can adapt it basically to the mixing idea I had before. So basically it was kind of obvious, but of course IP address, basically I assume that of course you can trace the IP address. There is also attacks on, let's say, timing and so on. So that's also a lot of things to care about if you actually want it to work in production and actually help people with an anonymization.
Yeah, the other thing, you identify two attack vectors. One was that I'm not sure how you wrote it. I didn't put it to myself, but one was the denial of service coordinator denial of service attack that a lot of people basically don't sign at the end. But you said that it doesn't matter, you just get banned, and then it's gonna cost money. That's exactly the same what I actually did. I just formalized that how much money it will cost if the anonymity set is decent. But it's interesting that you were seen at that time that this is going to be a problem. And the other problem, and there wasn't any more, is that the Sibyl attacks thing, and that who Sibyl attacks, and that's exactly the same what I did, that it's gonna cost money, and if not the Tumblr Sibyl attacks, if not the coordinator Sibyl attacks, then it won't even be able to Sibyl attack, because there's always going to be honest nodes. Not exactly like that, but yeah, it's pretty accurate. So it was so interesting that you already seen these two attack vectors that's happening. Anyway, I'm happy I found you, actually. Really.
Yeah, I'm happy you actually brought this idea to production. So can actually get a good wallet now.
Yeah, I just wish I would have read your posts back then, or Maxwell would have linked to that.
Yeah, it's of course, a lot of I guess a lot of brilliant ideas are buried in this kind of forums, basically. So a lot of stuff. But yeah, eventually, if the idea is kind of obvious to combine something charm developed with mixing conjoins, then eventually somebody is going to do it. That's good about open source community. That's so many people, and finally somebody can get it to actually to the completion.
Right, from an idea to an actual implementation. Shinobi, do we have any questions in the chat? Were you monitoring it? Are you still here?
Yeah, actually, I'm really kind of shocked that I haven't seen really any questions except just a few comments as you guys were talking. But I mean, it's been a really interesting talk. I think Alex, you hit the nail on the head. Like people see a lot of ideas being like actually fleshed out and built nowadays. And if you really dig through places like Bitcoin Talk, it's like these things were like discussed almost a decade ago and it just like constantly brought up and then lost and brought up again. And I mean, it's just really nice to like hear everything kind of from your perspective and the ideas you were working on and get more of like a deep dive into that history. Because I feel like over the last few years with all the new people coming into this space, like they don't really kind of appreciate that way that ideas kind of just pop up and get lost and pop up again. They just kind of see like the most recent attempt at something and they think like that's where the idea began. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think like recognition is, of course, it's a cool thing, but yeah, I guess the main thing that things get done. That's basically maybe there are more ideas in this all forums which still should be implemented, which cannot basically which can be used to improve Bitcoin. But still, I think it's still kind of possible to make it more resilient to various kinds of attacks and so on. So, but yeah, now like with this scaling drama, we kind of forgot some more interesting stuff people have been working with and described in the earlier days.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I mean, sorry, no fire. I was just gonna say, like the scaling war really kind of shoved all the privacy work to like the back burner. It's nice to see it coming up again.
Yeah.
Right. Do you have any other questions, Shinobi? Maybe because I'm going to wrap it up then.
I mean, mostly just like Alex, if you could kind of tell the viewers like where they could kind of reach you and like follow along with you, and maybe anywhere they can see like the kind of stuff you're working on now, if you have anything out there publicly.
Yeah, I'm kind of a bit away from Bitcoin now, since basically for various reasons I mentioned that I'd rather work on some more new stuff. So yeah, I'm on Twitter, for example, killerstorm. You have probably readers can read the tweet announcing this talk, which mentions my Twitter. So yeah, I quite often I post about Bitcoin, some blast from the past. I have been working on before that. I was working on kind of consensus algorithms, so I often post about that. Also, so all the same stuff. Yeah, so yeah, maybe you can follow me on Twitter.
So it's Twitter and Reddit killerstorm. All right, that's a strong name. Okay, I'm really happy we did this interview. It was really a pleasure. You have any final thoughts? Maybe. Do you want to say something? Do you have a message? What's your advice for newcomers?
Yeah, my advice to newcomers is basically, of course, to study. Basically, it doesn't actually, my problem is like how basically why I didn't post, for example, this privacy stuff earlier. That I assumed that I'm a newcomer. I don't know cryptography. I don't know maybe Bitcoin protocol perfectly. So like I thought like other guys already thought about it. And already covered it, so I don't need to do anything. And it turned out that, yeah, I was maybe the first to describe this, and I could post it even earlier, actually. So yeah, like don't be afraid to basically think yourself, think how to improve things, identify problems. That actually matters a lot, to actually think with a fresh mind. You can identify what problems are there. Even if people tell you it's okay, might be not really okay, and you can come up with fresh solution, or you can come up with some solution people thought before. It doesn't matter. What matters is the progress, how basically that the problems get covered, that the issues get addressed, that the progress is made. So don't be afraid to actually invent something for yourself. Even if you're not an expert, you can always read stuff in different sources. There are a lot of papers, so you can read just Wikipedia. That often that's enough. So yeah, that's kind of the progress. So don't assume that the core developers, whoever else, already will solve all the issues for you. It's basically up to new developers, after users, to keep working on the protocol and improve it.
It was a perfect last comment. So I guess, Alex, thank you for coming on here. This is a really interesting talk to listen to. And Nopara, thank you for digging this up and coming back on the channel. It's nice to have you on again.
Thank you. And I hope Alex's company Mizrahi fail and he will come back to Bitcoin.
Thank you, guys.
Where you put your effort and energy and your talent because we need you.
Thanks, guys. It was very interesting to talk and basically think about basically going in the past.
All right, well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I guess you can catch us for the normal one on Sunday. Thanks again for coming on, both of you guys, and toodaloo, everybody.
Bye-bye.